Every 9 years, 7 boys and 7 girls left Athens on a black-sailed ship, and none of them came back. Not killed in battle, not lost at sea. Handed over on purpose by their own city, to be eaten by something that lived under a palace on the island of Crete. This is the story of the year that stopped. To understand why Athens paid this price, you have to go back 1 generation to a man named Aegeus, king of a city that had just lost a war it never should have fought. Athens had killed the son of King Minos of Crete, and Minos did not want gold. He did not want land. He wanted tribute measured in children, sent across the sea every 9 years to feed something he kept beneath his own house. That something was the Minotaur, half man, half bull, born to Minos' wife after a curse from the god Poseidon, and too dangerous and too shameful to kill. So Minos didn't kill it. He built it a home. He hired the greatest engineer in the ancient world, a man named Daedalus, and told him to build something no living creature could ever walk out of. Daedalus built the Labyrinth, not a maze with a clever trick to it. A structure engineered to erase direction itself, corridors that curved back on their own logic, a dead ends that looked like progress, a floor plan so deliberately confusing that even Daedalus, its own architect, was said to have barely escaped it himself. You did not solve the labyrinth. You just got lost more slowly than the thing hunting you. Every 9 years, 14 Athenian teenagers walked into that structure, and the Minotaur walked out the only winner it had ever had. By the 3rd shipment, a prince of Athens had had enough. His name was Theseus, son of Aegeus, and he had spent his whole life proving himself in ways that should have terrified a king raising an heir. He'd cleared a road of bandits and monsters most grown soldiers avoided. He had, by every account of his youth, already lived a life bigger than the crown he was set to inherit. And when the ship with the black sails prepared to leave for Crete a 3rd time, Theseus did something no prince in that position had ever done. He volunteered to be one of the 14. His father begged him not to go. Theseus had one condition in return, a small detail that would matter enormously later. The ship always sailed with black sails, a mourning color, because everyone assumed it was sailing toward death. Theseus told his father, "If I survive, if I actually kill this thing and come home, I will change the sails to white. Watch for white sails. That's how you'll know before I've even reached the harbor." Aegeus agreed. Then he watched his son sail away under black cloth toward an island where 28 people had already disappeared and nobody had ever explained how. Crete was not a myth to the people who feared it. It was the richest, strongest naval power in the entire region, ruled from a palace at Knossos so vast and so architecturally strange that archaeologists who excavated its real ruins thousands of years later initially assumed they'd found the labyrinth itself. Corridors that dead-ended without warning, rooms nested inside rooms, a civilization wealthy and confident enough to build something that looked, even without a monster in it, like it was designed to disorient anyone who didn't belong there. Whatever the truth behind the myth, the fear of that palace was not irrational. There's a detail from the real archaeology of Bronze Age Crete that makes the myth even harder to shake. Frescoes recovered from the ruins at Knossos show young men and women vaulting directly over the backs of charging bulls, grabbing the horns and using the animal's own momentum to launch themselves into a handstand across its spine. Historians still argue about whether bull leaping was sport, ritual, or both, but nobody argues about the risk. A miscalculated grip meant getting gored or trampled in front of an audience that came specifically to watch. Somewhere in that real, historical practice of feeding young performers to enormous animals for spectacle, you can see exactly where a myth about children sent to a bull man in a palace basement might have come from. The Minotaur may never have existed. The fear the story is describing almost certainly did. When the Athenian ship arrived, it wasn't the king who changed everything. It was his daughter. Ariadne, princess of Crete, saw Theseus among the 14 condemned and did the one thing her own father would never have forgiven if he'd known in time to stop it. She fell for him, or believed in him, or simply couldn't stand watching another shipment disappear into that structure without at least trying to change the outcome. She went to Daedalus, the only person alive who understood the labyrinth from the inside, and asked him for the one thing he could give her that Minos never could. Not a map. The labyrinth was too complex to map. Something simpler. A ball of thread. Her plan was almost embarrassingly basic for something built to defeat the greatest engineering trap in the ancient world. Tie one end of the thread at the entrance. Unspool it as you walk deeper in. However lost you get, however many turns and false paths the labyrinth throws at you, the thread only goes one way. Follow it back, and you walk out exactly the way you walked in. She gave the thread to Theseus in secret the night before he was due to enter. She asked for one thing in return. Take me with you when you leave. The next morning, Theseus walked into the labyrinth with the other 13, but he was the only one holding the end of a thread that led back to daylight. What happened inside is the part every version of this story lingers on the longest, and for good reason. This wasn't a fair fight. The Minotaur was faster, stronger, and it knew corridors Theseus was seeing for the first time, in the dark, with nothing but a sword and a length of string tying him to the only exit. Ancient depictions show the fight in fragments. Theseus dragging the creature by one horn, pinning it against a wall that curved the wrong way, driving a blade in without a clean angle to work with. There was no strategy that made this fair. There was only refusing to lose. The Minotaur died in that labyrinth, the first and only living thing in 9 years to walk in and not become part of the tribute count. Theseus followed the thread back, through every turn that had taken him deeper, and this time each one led him closer to the door instead of further from it. He walked out into daylight holding the end of a string, with 13 other Athenians still alive behind him for the first time in 27 years that a shipment had ever come home at all. Ariadne was waiting, exactly where she'd asked to be, ready to leave the only home she'd ever known for a man she'd helped save. This is where most versions of the story get quiet because what happened next isn't the ending anyone wants. On the journey home, Theseus left Ariadne behind on an island called Knossos, asleep on a beach, and sailed on without her. The ancient sources can't agree on why. Some say the gods intervened and took her for another purpose entirely. Some say Theseus simply abandoned her. What almost every version agrees on is that the man who had just proven himself willing to die for people who weren't even his own family sailed home without the one person whose plan had actually saved his life. And in the middle of all of it, in the grief or the distraction or simply the exhaustion of surviving something that had killed everyone before him, Theseus forgot the sails. His father was waiting on a cliff above the harbor at Athens the way he'd been waiting every day since the ship left, watching for the one detail that would tell him his son was alive before the ship was even close enough to see faces. Black sails, the same color the ship had left under 3 years before. Aegeus did not wait to find out if it was a mistake. He believed what the color told him, and he threw himself from the cliff into the sea that has carried his name ever since, the Aegean. Theseus came home a hero to a city that had just lost its king because of a detail so small he never thought to check it. He became king of Athens that same day, ruling a city he'd just saved by killing a monster no one else had managed to face, sitting on a throne he'd just inherited by forgetting to change a piece of cloth. Every part of this story is built the same way, a hero who is genuinely brave and genuinely reckless in the same breath. A rescue that only worked because a stranger risked everything to help, and was abandoned the moment she wasn't needed anymore. A father who waited faithfully for years, undone by the one detail his son forgot to think about. The tribute stopped. The labyrinth, whatever it actually was, never took another Athenian child, but nobody in this story got the ending they were owed. Not the monster born into a shape it never chose and hidden away for existing. Not Ariadne, who solved the unsolvable and got left on a beach for it. Not Aegeus, who spent 9 years dreading a black sail and died from seeing one anyway. Not even Theseus, who won the fight everyone remembers and still has to live with the one detail he lost. Every 9 years, for 27 years, 7 boys and 7 girls sailed towards something no one had ever explained. Then, for one voyage, one prince decided that not knowing wasn't a good enough reason to keep sending them. He was right to go. He was still careless with everyone who helped him get home. Both of those things are true, and neither one cancels the other out. That's the story ancient Athens chose to keep telling itself for thousands of years, instead of a simpler one where the hero gets everything right.